click, which means we're running. Okay, we're back for the next part of this. And soon I'm going to improve the visual aspect of this by getting a camera or whatever, a new phone or something. I'm using my computer right at the moment and using the webcam on it, and it does seem to work, but it's not the greatest. So anyway, back to our doodle, which I think is going along okay. Not overtly upset with how it looks. I don't think it looks great, but I think it's coming along all right. And I'm continuing to put in random thoughts as they occur to me. I mean, the whole idea is, well, it's not the whole idea, but some of the idea here is kind of a dissection process, you know, just kind of taking things apart and rearranging them to any shape or form that I want to do with it. Ears are always funny. Probably best to look at things to draw them, but I think in this case I don't have to worry about it. The lawn people are outside. Let me shut the door. Those leaf blowers will go on all day long today. It drives you crazy. But they do make the place look nice. So in a situation like what I've got here, and this is a fairly long drawing, you can see it go down there. When I get down to that part, I'll lower the cam. As I said yesterday, I don't really want to make the thing be all the same, and by that is each element being relatively similar in size can cause for not as interesting a image as I would want. So the idea is somewhere in this thing, which I'm thinking right here, is I'm going to have some sort of big dominant shape which will improve the overall look of this thing. I still haven't gone and gotten that chiseled in the way of myself. You can see that big chiseled marker, which I'll still probably go get today. And so I'm running out of juice on these super Sharpies, but they've worked pretty well, really. I mean, I like the look of you know how it goes down. They're easy to work with, and I don't think they're made of the same stuff they used to be, because they don't smell to high heaven like they used to. They used to really stink bad, and I'm sure they were probably pretty toxic, but they don't seem to be that way anymore. They might have changed the formula in them or something. I really don't know. Yesterday I made mention of George Grosz, and I'm not sure how you really pronounce his name. I think it's spelled G-R-O-Z, period, so I guess that's pronounced Grosz. I guess we could look that up, couldn't we? Where's my phone? Right here. Put the pen down and we'll figure it. In the future, I'll have a little image pop up right about here, and it'll have the artist's name, so that people can go look them up if they'd like to. And it will have the, I'll pop a little picture, maybe a piece of their work. So I think that would be interesting. And maybe, since this is not so much of an instructional sort of video, it's more of a share and tell like you used to have in school, you know. Basically, it's just me running my mouth and you watch me draw. G-R-O-S-Z is how you spell this name, or spell his name. He has an autobiography, which I used to have a copy of. I don't know if I have it anymore, called Ecce Homo, which is Latin for behold a man. I think it means behold a man, which was supposedly the statement that Pontius Pilate said when he presented Christ to the crowd or whatever that was yelling at him. And so it becomes kind of a legendary sort of remark or comment. That was the title of his book, which is an autobiography, which is a very interesting autobiography. You really get a feel for what art was like around the 20s and the 30s during, in the course of the First World War and the Second World War too. Of course, by the time of the Second World War, he had immigrated to the United States, and I guess he became an American citizen. I really don't know. Probably did. And he continued his kind of critique of the Third Reich in his artwork, which he was very vehemently opposed to, which anybody in their right mind would be. This is like a Mr. Potato Head. Just took the eyes and moved them all over the place, and took the ear and put it somewhere. Oh, strange concept, Mr. Potato Head. I remember having one when I was a kid. I think my brother and I both had one. I have an older brother, and we would make weird little faces and stuff like that. I also like working with what do they call this? Plasticine, the old modeling clay that you could buy, and you make some pretty. There was some sculpture that I made with those, and pretty cool, really. I think one of the more interesting sculptors of the 20th century was Giacometti, and there's a lot of his work. If you don't live near DC, it doesn't mean anything to you, but there's a lot of his work in the National Gallery and in the Hirshhorn as well. He's pretty well collected. They almost have a whole room dedicated to him. And his sculpture is, he's very much involved with surrealism to some extent, or to a large extent actually. And his sculptures are these long, spindly sort of figures that are kind of rough hewn. I assume he would make the things out of beeswax and then cast them, into bronze. And it's almost like the space that surrounds the figure begins to eat away at it in all these different angles till it's it's not down to bone, but it almost looks like it's bone because the skeletal look and how thin these figures are and their appearance is pretty striking, but yet you'll see quite a lot of small details in the faces and stuff like that on the figures that he works with. And his paintings were done pretty much the same way too, although most of his paintings were almost essentially monochromatic. He would add certain amounts of color in here and there, but he constantly worked in an image with it almost disappearing. Is what it boils down to. And you kind of got that feeling that this thing is just evaporating right in front of your eyes, that's just the way it strikes me. Some people might have another opinion on how it looks to them. I'm not coming from a scholarly viewpoint on these artists. I'm bringing my own opinions of them, which can be way off in terms of what the artist probably intended, and maybe often are. I really don't know. But it's fun to talk about them, and it's gives a good basis. I mean, it's like you get involved. You get involved with the things you do, and you have this great kind of like support army of artists, that you can always go look at and get ideas and get inspiration from, and I mean, it's just the whole involvement is a very good experience, and it can actually wind up being your life, is what it boils down to. I mean, I never made money as an artist, and it was not a career for me, but it was an avocation. I've done it all my life, and I'll sell stuff here and there, but I think the idea of selling is, it's wonderful if you can sell your artwork and you can support yourself doing that. I think there's very, very, very few people who can do a thing like that, but more power to those who do. But I wouldn't obsess on the fact that you don't, if that's the case, because anybody can just maintain the job and just do it on your free time. That's how I did it. I did accountants. I would do these really wild, well, I could go get one, back in the back room there, these really wild watercolors. And they were done very much like what you're seeing here, except they were in very vibrant, bright colors. And they were stream of conscious, images. And I did them on my lunch hour. I mean, I would, every day at work, where I had like a little workstation, and I'd just turn around and I'd have my lunch. I brought my lunch with me, and I'd crank out the watercolors and I'd just work on them. And it's amazing, just 1 hour a day, which, I mean, I'd work on them at home too sometimes. So a lot of times I'd just leave the stuff there at work. At least I think I did. I can't remember now exactly. But it's amazing how much you can get done with just an hour's a day's worth of effort, I mean, it accumulates rather quickly, and the next thing you know, you got scads of pictures. I had some of them on the website Van Gogh, that's spelled V-A-N-G-O, and that's a very good website, but you really have to kind of keep it up, and I didn't. And I sold quite a few pieces there, as a matter of fact. And but I sold one of my really big paintings, and I should have taken it down, and I forgot. And I had painted over the thing. That painting, it was a $500 painting, so I mean, it was, a fair amount of money for it. And I didn't have the painting to sell. I had to apologize, and they said, please keep it up, the date and everything. I said, I will definitely do that. And then I can understand this. They sent out a little thing, and I don't think it was strictly because of me, because they deal with thousands of people. But they were going to start penalizing and charging the artists if the works were not kept up to date. And I said, well, I'm a little bit too absent-minded to deal with something like that, so I took my site down. I just said, that's it, I'm not going to pull it anymore. But I may join them again. I mean, it's one of those things they always ask, why are you leaving? And I said, well, no, it has nothing to do with you guys. I mean, you still provide a real nice service, and and I think it's a really good thing that you do. It's just me. It's on account of me. I just have a tendency to not keep up with things, and they'll catch up to me. It's just kind of my nature. Our lives are so filled with so much stuff. It's just incredible. existence is not a simple existence, that's for sure, not in this day and age. I don't know that it ever was, but certainly nowadays, it just seems like we're inundated with stuff all the time. I think that's one of the things also about doing this type of work, or any work that uses kind of a crowded spatial relationship to the to the overall effect that you get from this thing. I mean, of being a flood of so much sensory information and so much stuff, and I think that's really a consequence of how we live. It's not. It's everything all at once. We don't live in a nice sequential world where you tackle one thing after another. You just flooded with stuff constantly. And I think sometimes artwork like this is a reflection of that condition that we live under or in. I don't know if you should say under or not. It is stuff. Isn't it funny? I'll work like that, and then also see something over here. I say, well, let me go do that right now. I mean, who knows? Maybe the way we're doing it with all these computers and everything, and the flood of information, is more than we can mentally handle. And schizophrenia as a consequence of literate man. That was, I think, a quote from Marshall McLuhan. I believe it was him who said it. It might have been Alan Toffler, but I'm pretty sure it was McLuhan. And I can understand what he's talking about, because I mean, we were even back then, and that was before the computer revolution, the information age, and it was bad enough even then, to cause a lot of stress and a lot of problems for our well-being. So we live in that type of world, and try to make the best out of it. It can be pretty daunting, I think, at times. But I mean, I'm retired, so I mean, I don't have as many pressures on me as I once did, and I can do this at my leisure whenever I feel like it. I don't have to shoehorn it into some parts of a day along with, a million other things, which is kind of, it's a nice place to be. I can't argue that, Interesting how you'll pick up I'll be standing, and when I step back and I look at it, and I'll see something and say, well, I like this, so I'll put some of this over here. I mean, it's kind of like a big giant Home Depot. You've got all these shapes and things that you've done, and you're distributing across the surface of your work, and you can create some, or you can just pick and choose, because a lot of it is already sitting there, ready for you at your disposal. I like the little hashes like this. I think they're kind of cool. There's so many different ways you can draw these things, and it's just, you can just let your imagination go. If you want, you can just shut your eyes and start scribbling. There was one guy, I remember reading about this one fellow. I don't know who he was. He wasn't a major artist, but he would go to work or go wherever he was going. I'm sorry about that. Let me turn this off for a minute as soon as those guys with the leaf blowers leave.